Hello, everyone. It's your boy Josh Ripp. Once again, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in, and I have a special guest this weekend. We have Miss Sally. Would you like to introduce yourself, tell people who you are, and basically what you do? I don't even know what to title you with, so I'll let you do that.
Thank you, Josh, for having me today.
Sure.
I'm Sally, and I am an abortion recovery facilitator, and I volunteer for First Care Clinic here in Madison. And what I do is I run healing programs for people who've been dealing with the emotional after effects of
Sure.
abortion.
Yeah. Very difficult topic to touch on. I know there's a lot of people who lean both ways, but nonetheless, it's a very, very difficult conversation and choice for someone to have to make. And I might get into a little bit. I have some experience in this, area of life that I went through something, and you have too, and we'll probably touch on both of those. But it's a very traumatic experience. Sometimes some people don't realize it is as much as it is, but it's a very touchy subject, and we're going to touch on it. I know it could be controversial too, very controversial. So our goal with this podcast, or my goal here, is Sally actually reached out, and she felt very led to share something, and I actually thought at some point in my life I would be talking about this as well, because like I said, I've went through something myself. However, I want to let you know that we've already spoke about this. We're doing our absolute best to handle this with care, with love, with empathy, with grace. We're not trying to come down on anybody. We're not trying to necessarily impose anyone's views, even if my views or someone's views may come out in this podcast. This isn't about judging. It's not about anything like that. We're here to have a conversation in love and try to really just help support people who went through a traumatic experience like this if they're seeking that help. Did I get anything wrong with anything I said, Sally?
I don't think there's anything wrong. I think the only thing I would add is that if you are someone or you know someone who is struggling, that we start to understand that there are places we can go and safely talk about our experiences and receive some hope and healing.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the same experience after having an abortion. But some of us are negatively affected, and we don't have a place to talk about it.
Sure. Would you mind sharing with me why you're so passionate about this topic, or why I hope you're okay with me sharing that you actually reached out to me.
Absolutely.
So we're in the same faith circle. We belong to the same church. I hope that's okay with sharing too. But you reached out to me, and can you tell me why this is so important to you?
Yeah, I sure can. So in 1975, and I know that's a long time ago, right? Showing my age here, but in 1975, I was 15 years old, and found myself in a situation with an unintended pregnancy, and I was a child living with my parents, and the decision was made that that child would be aborted. And it was complicated by the fact that I was several weeks pregnant, and there was no place here in Madison that it could happen. So,
Sure. Now, do you mind if I ask or clarify? The decision was made by people other than you, not yourself.
Yeah. I did not have a voice.
Sure.
Because I was 15, number one, and scared to death, and just really felt like if I was going to survive, I needed to do what I was told.
Sure.
And honestly, I didn't know what was best, but I knew in my heart I didn't want an abortion.
Yeah.
But I also didn't have a plan for
Sure.
how to move forward if I didn't have an abortion. I was just lost, really.
Yeah.
In any case, my abortion was atypical because I was about 24 weeks pregnant, and I had to go to New York City and actually go through labor and delivery. I think what's important about my story is that I was told that an abortion would remove barriers from my life that I was going to face if I went ahead and had that child, and that my life would be better and my opportunities would be more available to me. And I can tell you without a doubt that for me, abortion caused more barriers in my life and more difficulties in my life. And I think that I've had to overcome so much more on this trajectory than I would have had I brought that child to life and either put him up for adoption or raised him.
Sure. That's hard. Do you mind, I know when we sat down before and you kind of told me your story a little before, do you mind sharing kind of, we don't have to get too in depth, but like your experience and how you felt in New York when you like kind of woke up and then you said you were alone? It was just a very traumatic experience.
It was traumatic. And, I recently read a statement that said, trauma doesn't occur from the hurt. It occurs from experiencing hurt alone. And I think that's really true, especially in my case. And the next morning when I woke up, I was basically kicked out of the hospital about 6 a.m. Because they told me they needed the bed. I didn't know where my parents were. I didn't really know where I was. I ended up sitting outside for a while and then back in the foyer in this chair, just waiting until they showed up. And I was so full of sadness and regret for what I had experienced. And it's a very lonely feeling. I was also then directed not to speak about my experience to anyone and that we were just going to forget that this ever happened. And that's a lot for anybody to carry, but certainly for a 15-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. Do you want to talk about how many women are faced with this difficult decision to make, and how many? First, we'll talk about women, and then we can see how many men. But like, how many women deal with this? Because I think this is one of those things where a lot of people, they do behind closed doors, and like, and we might not even know the full scope of even just what the surveys say. You know what I mean? But like, studies, numbers, like how many women are affected by this?
Yeah. What I have are numbers that reflect how many abortions have occurred.
Okay.
So since 1973, 63 million children have lost their lives to abortion. That equates to 63 million women. Most women between the ages of 21 and 24 are experiencing unintended pregnancies and seeking abortion. I think it's something like 64% desire some sort of healing after an abortion and don't know where to turn for it.
Yeah.
Men also find themselves wanting to be able to talk about their experience. Many of them, had no voice in the decision or felt pressured to say it's your choice. And then later regret that they didn't do something to stop it. Or just have feelings of loss that so many of us who've experienced abortion have.
Yeah. So, this statistic here on this sheet that you were so kind to make up for me, it shows that 44% of men report they did not have a voice in the decision of an abortion, which is a scenario that I fall into. And that's something that, that was hard for me a while back as well when I was younger. How much of what you do helps those men, or is it mainly focused on the women?
So the healing that I've been involved in so far has focused primarily on women. However, we have studies available to work with men. What we find is it's really hard to get men to show up and ask for help.
Sure.
But help is available, and you can get that through First Care Clinic. You can get that through a couple of different studies. There's one called Untangled Roots, and they have one for women and one for men. But that really looks at kind of the experiences you've had growing up and how they shaped you and help you start to see how you make decisions and when you decide to speak up and why you might not, and allow yourself to have a little more clarity about your own decision-making process and the things that have happened in your life that may have affected you and that process, and allow you to make changes. And then there's Reclaiming Fatherhood, which is another study that men can go through that, basically take them from the time they found out their partner was expecting, and then how the decision was made, and what their feelings were, and just allows them to further explore that.
Sure. Can you walk me through the process? Basically, when a woman finds out that she's pregnant, whether she's scared, she doesn't know what to do, she's leaning towards an abortion, and she's just scared and looking for help and support, and they reach out to First Care Clinic. Can you kind of walk me through pretty much the process, or what happens, or what you told me this before when we sat down, but can you kind of walk me through that process of how things go? And
I sure can. I just got to say that so many women wake up every day facing an unintended pregnancy, and the first emotion they have seems to be fear. And I can relate to that. I was terrified too. It's a very scary place to be. And when people do find First Care Clinic, it's a free clinic. It's medically accredited, nationally accredited, and staffed by accredited medical personnel and volunteers who act as patient advocates. So if a woman makes an appointment and comes into the clinic, she's greeted by a patient advocate who talks with her about her situation, gathers some information about, who she is and what her intentions are if her pregnancy test is positive, and asks her a little bit, just gets a basic information about who she is. Like, does she have financial support? Does she have support from family or friends or a partner, or is she feeling really alone? She will then get a pregnancy test. If the pregnancy test is positive, the nurse will determine whether or not she's far enough along to offer her a medically needed ultrasound to verify viability of the pregnancy. And we'll just talk with her about all of her options. The patient advocate actually goes through in depth what each of her options are. Abortion, and we talk about what the common procedures are, what the side effects and the common associated risks with abortion. And then we also talk about fetal development. And then we talk about modern adoption. Many women aren't aware that in today's age, they have the right to choose what sort of family their child could be adopted into, and whether or not they have and how much contact they have after the adoption. So many people aren't aware of that. And then we talk about parenting, and we, just say we understand parenting comes with challenges. Here are some of the most commonly asked questions, and here are some resources that are free in the community to people who choose to parent and might feel like they don't have a lot of resources. They meet with the nurse who provides really compassionate care and helps them understand where they are medically with their pregnancy, and offers them to be able to come back in the next week or so to make sure things are progressing as they are. One thing that isn't common knowledge is that many people have abortions before they even know if the pregnancy is viable. So they might be miscarrying or close to miscarrying, but they have the abortion anyway. So there's just a lot of good reasons to get that first step care.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the biggest misconception or thing that women may not know when it comes to, like you mentioned, all the, um, you know, other, options, adoption and things like that? But what do you think is the number one fear or thing that um, women are in the dark about, that this meeting kind of helps shed light on, and they're like, oh, I never thought of that before, or I didn't know that.
hmm I think most people come to us and their biggest fear is going through this alone. They feel like they don't have any support, whether that be emotionally, physically, financially, and they are still facing stigmas that I would have faced in 1975. Oh, she's not married. Oh, she um, isn't prepared for this. The kinds of things that people put on us when we find ourselves in situations that not everybody agrees with. But I think that the key piece of information is that our county, our city is rich in resources. There are places you can go for the supplies you need.
Yeah.
While you're raising your child, you can get medical care. You can get physical support. There's lots of resources, Babies and Beyond, and there's even maternity homes in our city for people if they have no place to live and want to be in a place where they can be safe and carry their pregnancy to term.
Yeah. I think one of the arguments that I hear a lot of times too is, with the resources and all that, like, everybody, they say everybody wants, to push pro-life, but then after the child is born, they never want to step up or help and all that other stuff. And I don't think that's true. I believe that there is a lot of community and people that are willing to step up and help too. But I think one of the misconceptions is people think, oh yeah, well, you just don't want her to have this, and then once she has the child, then like she's on her own to fend for her own. But I think what you said, there's a lot of resources out there. It's just people aren't really don't know about them, or they're not tapping into them, or they're just simply unaware of that.
True, and there's people who will walk alongside a woman in her unexpected pregnancy if she decides to carry to term. People who will direct her to resources and make referrals for things like, if they need to finish their education or get some specific job training or help finding housing or, prepare for an interview. How do I do that?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. We have a wonderful care coordinator at First Care Clinic who does follow up with our patients and offers resources. And if a woman or a couple is willing to avail themselves of those resources, it can definitely turn out the way they'd like it to.
Yeah. Let's talk about the emotional impact that abortions have on people, because I think it's like most decisions, and forgive me if I'm ignorant in this, but a lot of times we act in fear out of emotions in so many instances, not just like abortions, but and later down the road we're like, oh man, did I make the right choice and all that stuff. And so let's go down the road of the impact emotionally that these kind of things have on people.
Yeah. I can talk from my own personal perspective and then what I've learned through my training as an abortion healing facilitator. And one of the most common emotional after effects from abortion is anger or rage. And another one is crying, just all of a sudden crying for no reason. Many times that morphs into depression, anxiety, fear, and isolation. I can talk about when I was 15 and went back to school after my abortion 2 days later, having been told, we don't talk about this with anybody. I walked into my high school, and there were hundreds of kids who I suddenly had nothing in common with, or so I thought as a woman who had experienced an abortion. For people who are older than that, they are in the company of many women who've experienced abortion. 1 in 4 women experience abortion by the time they're 45 years old. And we know that many women have these negative emotional after effects. And what happens is their life kind of starts unraveling. My parents said, you need to stay in school and get your high school diploma. So that's a reason why this abortion is really important. So after the abortion, I was so distraught and felt so alone that I isolated myself. And I did that by skipping most of my classes my sophomore year. I walked around by myself outside in the cold weather because it was too hard to be around people that I couldn't relate to and that couldn't relate to me. So that isolation factor comes in. But I didn't necessarily put that together until I was older. I just knew I was miserable.
Yeah.
And that I didn't have anything in common with these people.
Yeah. You couldn't pinpoint exactly necessarily where it was stemming from.
Right. Yeah. Well, eventually I learned that if I didn't go to school, I wasn't going to graduate and I wasn't going to get out of the house. So I got a little smarter and started going back to class, ended up graduating and went out into the world. But then what happened was I started experiencing rage, just hot, fiery anger.
Just towards the world in general, like just
hair trigger.
You couldn't figure out where it was coming from.
Yeah, had no idea. I'd never been that way in my whole life.
Oh wow!
And I was just like spewing anger at the drop of a hat, and I was scared of myself. Almost. There were emotions I just wasn't prepared to manage, and through all the healing that I've done, I've come to understand that rage, that anger, was kind of born of a lack of control in my own life and not being told the truth about what an abortion was going to feel like afterwards.
Yeah.
So those are some of the common after effects. I later in my life, not too many years later, but in my young 20s, experienced some clinical depression, experienced anxiety, got prescribed lots of medication that didn't help. Just it took a lot of inner work that I don't regret at all to finally see that what I was experiencing emotionally was directly related to my abortion experience. And I think that's true for a lot of women.
Yeah. How are you feeling almost 50 years now? It's 49. Is that right?
Yeah.
49 years later, almost half a century later. How are you still feeling now about this decision?
Yeah. Well, I wish I had my son here. I never wanted it to begin with, and I'm very sorry it happened. For me, like I said, I've been through therapy with various counselors. But it wasn't until, and that helped. I'm not gonna lie, it helped. And healing is different for everyone, looks different for everyone, and sometimes it takes more than one type of healing to 100% heal. But for me, the most effective healing that happened for me is I was sitting in church. As you said, we go to the same church. I don't mind sharing. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and I was attending a church that handed out their Sunday bulletin about 25 years ago. And in there was an ad for a Bible study called Forgiven and Set Free, Healing the Abortion Wounded Heart. And I couldn't believe it. I was seeing it in a church and where nobody talked about abortion. And B, I felt like it was just for me. Like, oh my gosh, there's hope outside of all this other type of healing. And I signed up for it, and I went through, I believe it was a 10 or 11 week Bible study. I learned through that study that I'm 100% forgiven. And that's what my heart and soul needed to take away the barriers that remained in my life. That's what I needed to be able to stop fearing retribution. I went through life for 24, 25 years wondering when the next crisis was going to happen and I was going to be punished for what I did.
Right. Yeah.
And anytime anything went wrong, I figured, well, that's because you had that abortion.
Yeah.
There was no why me. It was because of that abortion that happened is what I thought. Well, I've learned differently now, and I'm grateful for that knowledge and grateful for my relationship with Jesus. I don't fear being judged about my abortion decision back in 1975 anymore because he's my judge and jury. And if my experience can help just one woman step forward and get some healing, or a man step forward and get some healing, I'm grateful.
Amen.
Yeah.
Speaking of men getting healing, so you said that incident that in church when you found that when they were handing that out. First of all, I think that's great. I think it's I'm a big advocate on churches touching the things that a lot of people don't want to touch on or hear. They just leave that in the closet. That's not for. But I think churches should touch on that stuff. I mean, the addictions, the drug use, the addictions, the adultery, the extramarital affairs, the pornography, the abortions, all that messy stuff. Like, people need to know that is stuff that can be taken to God.
Yes.
And it's covered by the blood of Jesus.
Yes.
Like, I think people
Sorry.
And I think people sometimes think the biggest misconception is you got to get your life right before you come to God. And that's just not the case. Like, we come to God because our life isn't right. You know what I mean? People need to know, like, the blood of Jesus, like, covers all of that. Like, we don't have to get right to come to him. Like, he takes all that mess and he handles it for us. And I think that revelation of just God's love and his grace for us is just so freeing.
It is. It definitely is.
So, but I do think these things should be touched on in the churches in graceful, truthful, loving manners.
Yes.
But back to I was saying, about the men who deal with this too. I dealt with a situation when I was 21 years old, and I was with a woman, and it was in a very tumultuous time in my life too. So I was just, I believed in God. I put my faith in God when I was 12, but it was kind of like, okay, my faith's in you. Okay. And, I did the deed, I said the prayer, I gave my heart to you, peace. I'll see you when I get there. I had no idea we cultivated a relationship with the Lord, and, we live for him, and, we continue going to church, and, I thought we just go when you need to, or when special occasions, Christmas and Easter, all that kind of stuff. And I chased the world for many years. And so I filled my pains and my voids and all that stuff with, the drinking, the partying, the women and all that stuff. And so I was dating a woman, and in 2003, it was a very, very tumultuous year. I started dating her, and then like a month later, my father had a massive stroke, and then he was in the hospital for like 6 months. And then so she was going through a very hard time in her life too. She was trying to get out of her mom. So then she moved into the house because like my dad wasn't there. He was in the hospital. So there was no like parents. So then it was just me and my brothers, just a bunch of, young kids in their young 20s and all that. And she ended up getting pregnant a couple months in. And it wasn't like it was an accident. Like we were, if I'm being honest, we were being careless. We didn't care. Like, it's like one of those things, like, what do you expect would happen? You know what I mean? It's not like we were taking precaution. I mean, we were just, that's what we were doing, and that's what happened. And I remember at the time, I believe like, I could be mistaken on all these things, but her heart wasn't in that relationship. I think she was in a relationship because she was, she needed to get out of her house. You know, she had a very tumultuous relationship with her mother, and she enjoyed being out of the house and having a safe place. And man, I was really in love with this woman, and but we were just young and we were just growing, but she was in love with another guy, and she was even with this guy. I'm not trying to throw the woman under the bus by all means. I wish her all the best. So my point isn't trying to throw her under the bus, but just her heart wasn't in it. So she didn't see a future with me, and she was in love with this other man, and she was with him like on my birthday, didn't come home till like 10, and this was like a male friend, you know what I mean?
Oh.
It didn't come home till like 8:00 at night on my birthday, and you know, so all the signs were there and all that. But she did end up she ended up getting pregnant, and then she ended up having an abortion, and I didn't have a say in it whatsoever. And then we dated a few more months, but then long story short, she ended up breaking up. She ended up getting with this gentleman, and she ended up getting pregnant by him and having his child and all that stuff. So it was just one of those situations. It was really tough because even if I knew that we didn't have a future, for me, I was raised by a mother with very conservative beliefs, and you know, just abortion was just even growing up in the church. It's something you didn't do. Like, that's a life. You know what I mean? And in my circumstance, I didn't believe that abortion should have been used as a form of birth control.
Right.
Like, you know, we got what was coming to us. Like, it happened because of our own foolishness, and like, you take responsibility for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just very, very adamant about not supporting it. I didn't support it mentally, emotionally, financially. I didn't take her to it or anything like that. And I know it was a very hard decision that she had to make too. So I'm very understanding and empathetic to that, you know. But it was hard on me because it was something I didn't want to go through with or support, and I didn't.
Right.
And sometimes I think it's kind of weird because there's like this conundrum, because I'm like, well, man, like if I did go through with that, like my life wouldn't be where it's at right now. And I'm very blessed right now. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like, oh man, you know, maybe that was what was best, but I still don't, like, I didn't support it, and I still don't. And I sometimes think like, oh, what would happen like if I had a child, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, he'd be like whatever, probably 20 now or something, you know, 21.
Right.
And well, I don't know if it was he or she, but it's just one of those things. Like, and for the longest time, I even have a tattoo of praying hands on my chest, and that what that symbolizes is that like moment and stage and season in my life. And so guys go through it too. Like, and I don't think women understand. I think it's kind of weird. Like, they won't give men a say in whether, you know, the child can. He has a say in whether that child is aborted or not. But they will make him, you know, pay child support too if someone, you know what I'm saying. So I don't know. It's just these really weird things, and
I'm just a complicated issue.
It is. Indeed. It is. But guys go through it too, though. Is what I'm saying.
And I'm sorry you went through it. It's not an easy experience to have.
Yeah.
And you know, not having any say had to feel really awful.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, our world has made abortion such a political.
Yeah.
It's become only thought of in politics.
Right.
So you either are on the side that is, you know, pro-choice, and it's all about women's rights and all of that, or you're on the pro-life side, and you don't want to accept anybody or anything that wants to, you know, consider or who may have had an abortion. So there's no place for people like you and me who've experienced these abortions to safely talk about what we're dealing with afterwards. And that's what I want to see change.
Yeah.
So, you know, abortion literally means to terminate a human life.
Yeah.
It's not about choices. It's not about any of that. It's about they're ending a human life, and it's been so sanitized.
Yeah.
And it's such, you know, now it's an election year. We hear about it all the time. But we don't hear about it in terms of a child's life. We hear about it in terms of rights.
Sure. Yeah, I think it has become a very, very politically charged, just pawn and component. Again, I still think it's a very touchy subject. It is. I believe, even though I'm not afraid or ashamed to admit, I will admit I'm pro-life. I do think there are some situations where I can understand that some women they don't like not having control of their body. I get that. But the biggest thing is I am empathetic to the situations where like a woman may be raped, or there might be situations of incest or things like that. And even at that level, I say I'm not necessarily the one to make that call, but I can understand like why you would do it in situations like that, or like even for the health of the mother. Like if she doesn't have an abortion, like her health can be a risk or she can die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you believe there are any instances in where abortions are a lot more understandable than other scenarios?
So, I would never try to make this decision for anyone else,
Sure.
but I can tell you that if a mother's life is at risk, that that child can be removed from the mother and given care outside of the womb, and we don't know what the outcome will be, whether or
Sure.
not that child will live, but we aren't deciding that,
Sure.
and the mother is safe. I think that in terms of sexual assault and incest, etc., I can tell you that my pregnancy at 15 occurred from a sexual assault, and I still would have welcomed that child into my life. Not everybody feels that way.
Sure.
However, the options still remain that, and for me, it would have been better to either carry to term and raise my child, or carry to term and adopt out my child, because death is real.
Yeah.
And that's me.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of compassion for women who choose abortion because they're feeling so scared and alone and confused. I think that you're never going to hear me judging anyone for having had an abortion.
Yeah.
How could I? But on the other hand, just because I had an abortion doesn't mean I can't be pro-life.
Sure.
And for me, my goal is really to help people understand what resources are available to them should they choose to carry to term. And then if they are experiencing negative after effects after having had an abortion, helping them understand that their life doesn't have to be a train wreck.
Yeah.
That they can go through some healing and recover and have some hope for their life and accomplish their goals.
Yeah.
I know women sometimes say, I need to have this abortion because I've got, I put so much time into my college education and I want to be able to finish it. And then they have an abortion and they can't go to class because they can't get out of bed because they're so distraught.
Yeah.
And that's not everybody, but it does happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does a woman do when she finds out she's pregnant and then she's just dealing with all these fears and scared, doesn't know what to do, is considering abortion? Now your clinic, First Care Clinic, that's based in Madison, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
But what does a woman do if, let's say, someone's watching this and she's half across the world?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does a woman do with this fear and just like what's the steps? What does she do?
I would reach out to your local pregnancy center. There's pregnancy centers in every state, and look for an accredited free clinic that will first of all confirm your pregnancy and then help you understand what all your options are, and walk with you through your decision-making process if you choose to. I would also just encourage women to think about it a little more slowly.
Yeah.
That fight or flight
Yeah.
kicks in.
Sure.
In any crisis, right?
Yeah.
And it drives us. But if we can just slow down a little bit and look at what the real situation is and what really is available to me if I make this choice or that choice or this choice.
I think that's actually really good advice, and not just in this situation, but in a lot of scenarios. It's just like take a step back and but then I think they might be fearing that they're running out of time, and then they feel that pressure. But I think actually like taking a moment to step back and just really slow down and think is actually really simple but sound advice, like great advice. Like really just slow down, think about it. I would really encourage people too to just pray about it. Really pray about it. Don't be afraid to get family involved in church. If you are afraid to tell family members, like go find a local church. Like I guarantee you, a real true like Christ honoring and following church is going to take you in. They're going to welcome you, and they're going to take you in their arms, and they're not going to make you feel shame or judged, and they're going to hear you out, and they're going to understand you. And I will be honest, there's some broken churches out there too.
Absolutely.
That might not get it right. We're all broken. That's why we need Jesus. But finding a good church I think is huge, and getting plugged into a church community is huge with everything in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when these things kind of come up, like you have a church community that could just come around you and support you in these instances.
Right. And don't give up, because something I also learned through my years of healing is that no means next. You may go somewhere hoping to find some answers and get some support and hear the word no. That just should translate and flip in your mind to next. Okay, there's somebody out here who will help me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have the perseverance to keep looking.
Sure. So help is out there. Hope is out there. Is there anything that like I may have missed that you want to cover still? Or I really want to get to every corner of this that I possibly can within the time that we have. And I just really want to make sure that people understand we're doing this in love. We're trying to help people. And we just, like I said, we want to bring them hope. We want to bring them, and we want to bring them information. We want to bring them value, that they feel like they have something that they learn from this.
Right.
So what else?
You're not alone. Again, 1 in 4 women have experienced abortion by the time they're 45. They are bagging your groceries. They're answering your phone calls. They're sitting next to you in church. They're on the bus with you. They're everywhere. And same with men. Men who've experienced abortions are all around us.
Yeah.
And you're not alone. And when you find a community where you can talk about what your experience has been, you're going to experience some relief. And you can start to heal once you experience that relief. If I am holding a secret and trying to deal with all the emotions that I can't understand that came from this experience, I'm going to turn to things like I did in my, I turned to alcohol. I turned to marijuana. Maybe some people have serial sex. They may have some anxiety, and now that's heightened beyond control. But what happens is our life starts to unravel. And I just want you to know that if your life's unraveling from an experience like this, there's hope out there. There's help out there. And there are people out there who are experiencing the same thing. And just take the step, be brave, ask for help, and come to a healing group.
I think the biggest thing would be people trying to find something like that. So First Care is this a locally based organization? Is it regional? Is it national?
So
worldwide?
Excuse me.
Oh, you're good.
First Care Clinic is a local clinic here in Madison, Wisconsin, that operates under the national umbrella of CareNet Pregnancy Centers. Its services are really to provide free medical care to women who are facing unintended pregnancies and to give them information and resources about what's available in their community to them in terms of resources and what's available in terms of options and what those options really look like.
Mm-hmm.
So what those risks, those side effects of and common procedures of abortion typically aren't explained.
Sure.
The modern adoption option, most people don't think about. And then, considering parenting, what's available to me if I should decide to parent. So information to help women make the choice that's best for them. I'm never going to judge anybody for the choice they make.
Yeah.
I want to be a representative at First Care Clinic who helps people understand their options. And if I encounter somebody who's had an abortion and is struggling, I want to offer healing services.
Sure. Can we talk a little bit about adoption? Because I remember specifically when my girlfriend at the time got pregnant. Again, it was in a very rough time in both of our lives. I even remember that year. Like, my father had a massive stroke. Like, she got pregnant, and then she had the abortion, and then we lost a house because my father was in the hospital. And then my grandma died, all within like less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
It was very hard. But I remember I was pushing for adoption. I was like, look, I understand you don't want to have a baby. It's too hard. I'm like, but can we please do adoption?
Mm-hmm.
Can we kind of talk on modern adoption? Like, what does that look like as far as you mentioned, like, parents can still be a part of their lives and still, you know what I mean? Like, kind of tell us because I think there's a lot of negative connotations or stereotypes to adoption per se from probably decades past, but show us kind of what modern adoption looks like.
Yeah, sure. I'll first say I'm not an expert on modern adoption. We have a care coordinator at First Care Clinic who is, and knows all the ins and outs of the procedure to follow if this is what you choose. But what I do know about modern adoption is that women can actually, state, I would like my child to be adopted into an African American family, or whatever requirements they might have.
Even like
education
income,
levels. Yeah. This would be my ideal
Sure.
adoptive family for my child, and the adoption agency would do their best to find a match like that. The mother can be involved in the choice process. So if the adoption agency, I have 3 prospective families for you. I know that my cousin who adopted, was able to create a video for the pregnant mom to learn about her and her husband and what their goals were and what they could offer this child. And so mom gets a choice and can, kind of pick her ideal family for her child.
Yeah.
And then she can also indicate if it's an open adoption or not. I have a friend who adopted a baby 7 years ago, and a couple of times a year they go to Minnesota to visit with her birth mom's family, and they're all together spending a weekend together. And it can be something like that. It can be more, it can be less. But I think the point is that women oftentimes don't understand that they can have a say in where their child goes,
Sure.
And how much contact they have after the fact.
Yeah.
I have another friend who adopted children and says that those children, when the minute they're 18, they are looking for their birth parents.
Yeah. I I want to clarify too, like, I understand like adoption is very hard as well too, because my girlfriend at the time, when I proposed that, she said no, I can't give it up for adoption. She's like, if I'm going to carry this, like, I can't give it away. So I think there's also that, and I think there's probably women too that they do sign up for adoption, and then it gets to that point and it's probably too late, like they already signed up for this and they can't take it back, and it just tears them up. Like, that's something you just carried, and that's and then I think that also over time that it really sets in with them, like, oh man, this is the reality sets in, like, this is a human being, this is a part of me, this is and a human life, and then it's very, very hard for them to give that up.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not an expert, but I do think that when you move forward saying you're going to place your child for adoption, I think you can change your mind.
Okay.
That's the information I have,
Sure,
but again,
sure.
I'm not an expert in that.
Yeah,
But I do believe that women today can change their mind.
yeah. All very hard decisions
Hmm.
in a very hard world we're all trying to navigate. We gotta all do this together.
Yeah.
But I wanted to. I felt led when you reached out to me. I said, it wasn't even a question. You're like, let me know what you think. I'm like, absolutely, let's go. Like,
It was awesome.
yeah, because I think it's a very important topic that should be talked about. And at the end of the day, this podcast is a forum to bring value and hope to people. I need people to know that, I don't want to just get on here and just let them hear my voice talk for an hour. Like that's pointless. I'm not serving no purpose doing that. Like people need to know that, or I want people to know that we're here to sure have fun sometimes, but also really touch on subjects. The biggest thing to me is I'm very passionate about things that I went through, and if I experienced it, and I went through a heck of a decade span of just panic attacks, depression,
Yes.
anxiety, so much hurt and so much pain because my hope and all my things were tied into this world
Yes.
that eventually is going to come to an end.
Yes.
So in a sense, I was more or less, we mourn those things because, we all know, like, I believe God, well, the Bible tells us God places eternity in our hearts. So our hearts are always longing for eternity
Yes.
with Him. But when we put all our everything into this life and we don't have a hope outside of it, like it just, we spiral out of control. And I'm not trying to get too deep theologically and all that other stuff, but I'm saying from my own experience, I lived a very, very, let's just say I spent so much time on all the wrong things, chasing the wrong things of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to learn from my mistakes, because it
For
took me way too many years to figure out and learn what I did now.
Mhm.
And if I can help someone else,
Right.
and not waste that much time in life, and here I am, I'm at an age right now where I'm like, I ran around wild for so many years. I don't know how I don't have kids right now.
Mm-hmm.
But probably one of the closest things was, when she got pregnant.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's like to be a father. And, that's something I always wanted when I was a child, and the older I get, I'm getting to that age where I'm starting to think like, is that even in the cards for me?
Mm.
And so, but that's because I spent so many years chasing all the wrong things,
Right.
the money, the women, the fame, and all those things. And rather than focusing on, family and things that are important,
Right.
and if I can help, save people from squandering all those years foolishly like I did, then my purpose is being served. And if I can help people heal from the things that I went through, some of my past, I've mentioned in previous episodes, porn addiction, sex addiction, and just living a very life full of debauchery and all that kind of stuff. And again,
Right.
and that's why I'm so passionate about youth too. I serve like doing youth leaders is because that's where a lot of that stuff really fell apart when I was 15.
Sure,
Is when I
sure.
just stopped going to church, sleeping in, and started chasing the world.
Yeah.
And so that's my passion. That's my mission. That's my purpose, and that's what I'm very passionate about. And again, if I can help people not go through what I did, if I can help spare them, then my purpose is being served.
Yeah. Thank you for doing
So-
that.
And thank you. No, thank you,
I
because
think
you're
that's-
helping too.
It's so important. And, I'll just quickly mention that, I did go on to meet a man, get married, and have 3 beautiful children. I have 9 fabulous grandchildren. And I will say, though, that because I didn't deal with the emotional after effects from my abortion, I ended up divorced after 18 years.
Mm.
And I take a lot of responsibility for that. I think that I was difficult to live with because my moods swung about. And I told you about some of the anger. Well, I got a hold of that. It still would pop up,
Sure.
and I didn't manage my emotions well. And did he have some responsibility in our demise? Of course. But I know clearly in my heart that my behavior that was rooted in that abortion experience definitely negatively affected my marriage.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage healing anytime I have an opportunity to.
Sure.
Because your life can be so good. My life has been so good for the last 24 years. I'm so blessed.
All praise and glory to God for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. Sally, thank you so much for joining. Once again, is there anything that we missed in this very, I'm sure there's so many other, alleys we could go down, but is there anything we missed important, prudent to this conversation we're having?
If you want to learn more about healing, you can contact me at First Care Clinic.
How can someone contact you if they'd like to
They can send a confidential email to Sally S. SALLYS at carenetdane.org.
Okay.
And I will respond to you with some information about what programs we can offer, and we'll go from there, find the best fit for you.
Awesome. So if someone does contact you, can you just really quick talk about the healing options?
Oh, absolutely. So we have an array of healing options. You could do one-on-one if that's what you're most comfortable with. I'm excited to say we're starting a monthly drop-in group.
Okay.
Where that format will be, you don't have to register, you just show up, and there will be a topic discussed each month, and it will be you and other people who've experienced abortion, men, women, their support persons, whoever you want to bring, can come and hear from other people who have had similar experiences and start to make sense of their feelings and what you're experiencing.
Sure.
So that's another option. Another one is a small group. We have an intensive day-long workshop. We have one coming up, in fact, on November 9th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And during that time, you'll be able to explore some of the feelings you've been having, connect some dots, grab some more healing tools, coping tools, be able to recognize what you really went through and have a safe place to talk about it. And then we have larger group options. And finally, in 2025, we'll be offering that Bible study that helped me so much.
Awesome.
Faith-based healing isn't always for everyone, but for me, it was critical.
Yep.
It might not have worked for me in the very beginning, but through my journey of healing, that ended up being one that was really critical for me. So there's all kinds of options, and we have booklets that we go through with folks because this, although it's not talked about, this is real. It's post-traumatic stress, basically, and people deserve to be able to process it and have a safe place to heal.
Yeah. Now, these are all in-person, local to Madison, Wisconsin, correct?
Correct.
But I don't want to discourage someone if they do feel that your story resonates with them and they want to write you an email, and just seek some sort of commonality. You'd be willing to,
absolutely.
Talk,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, let's say someone from the other side of the country or something, they would, they're watching this and they want to reach out.
Right. And I'll just put a plug in for another agency called supportafterabortion.com.
Okay.
People can go to that website and find all kinds of resources in their area.
Sure.
There. And CareNet Pregnancy Center also is a national organization that will list healing centers in your area.
Great. Sally, thank you again so much for coming on, sharing your heart, sharing your story, helping other people out there. And we just hope that your story can help somebody else out there.
And yours. Yeah. And thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much for coming on. Maybe hopefully we can have you back on or something.
Cool.
But I pray that the Lord will just bless you and your ministry and all that you do, and that just there could be a lot of hope and healing.
Absolutely. And prayers to you for your ministry. And thanks again for all you do and for welcoming me and this topic on your podcast.
My pleasure.
Really
Thanks again.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Well, we hope you guys were blessed by this podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.